the latest in the series of Access All Areas live webinars in association with the Event Production Show. My name is Christopher Barrett and I'm the editor of Access All Areas. I'd like to thank our sponsor Redbox Tickets and Events. During the session, we will explore what ticketing functionality and technology there is available to help event organisers stage COVID-safe shows, and we ask event organisers what they would like to see developed. We hear from ticketing operators about the technological advances that are enabling them to create suites of services that aid the smooth running of COVID-safe events, from staggered and contactless venue access to track and trace data management. We also explore whether ticketing services can work hand in hand with rapid turnaround testing initiatives to help orchestrate full capacity events. I'll ask the panel to introduce themselves in a minute, but please note that we very much want to include your questions. You see at the bottom of your screens a Q&A function, so please do enter your questions there and we will put them to the panel. Okay, Paul?
Oh, hello there. Yeah, I'm Paul Up from Managing Director of Redbox Tickets and Events. We look after lots of greenfield festivals and events outside, looking after venues and all different sectors.
Okay, great. Mo?
Morning, my name's Mo Jones. I'm co-founder of Ticket Sellers and Eventry. We specialise in outdoor events, mainly festivals, building software for the public and for the crew side of things. Okay, and Steve Heap, please.
Good morning, I'm Steve Heap. I'm the General Secretary of the Association of Festival Organisers and Chairman of the Events Industry Forum. My perspective today will be to look more generally at how our members are going to cope in 2021 and what ticketing opportunities are going to be there for them. Okay, and Stuart, please.
Hi, good morning. I'm Stuart Galbraith. I'm the CEO of Kilimanjaro Group. I'm the Vice Chairman of the CPA. I'm one of the founding members of the new Live organisation, which has been liaising with government or attempting to liaise with government over the last 9 months. And across our group, we sell in the region of about 4 million tickets a year.
Okay, thank you very much. And Stuart, I'm going to start with you actually. Obviously, you know, at the moment, we're nearing the end of what's been a very sort of taxing year for everybody in this industry. And, you know, we're looking forward to hopefully a new kind of episode and things changing, hopefully dramatically next year. I mean, you obviously own the Belladrum Festival and you've got a lot of experience in festivals. I'm sure you've never had a year like this, but looking at the way you're sort of planning the event next year and how ticketing technology can play a role in that. Can you just sort of talk me through, I guess the question is, has the COVID-19 situation impacted the way you're sort of planning or looking at ticketing of that event next year?
In the case of Belladrum in particular, no, it hasn't, for the simple reason that we postponed from this year. And we, when we postponed, we had a 93% ticket retention rate. And then we've subsequently resold the other 7%. But because customers already had those tickets in hand, albeit electronically, we're basically using a system that we put in place in 2019. In terms of are we going to be changing how we operate on site, then yes, we absolutely are. But we already have an electronic contactless scanning system anyway. But the administration of the customer, that sounds awful, doesn't it? The administration of the customer, the dealing with the customer on site will obviously have to become much more carefully thought through, both from a health and safety point of view and also a regulatory point of view, as and when we know what is going to be in place at the time of the festival. But from a ticketing perspective, we've been fortunate in as much we haven't had to change anything.
Okay, I mean, in terms of, you know, ticketing technology has developed quite dramatically in the last, you know, 5 to 10 years. It's developing all the time and changing all the time. I mean, what would you say is the most kind of encouraging or helpful recent development with ticketing technology that you've seen in terms of sort of enabling events to take place under COVID-19 guidance? I mean, obviously digital is a huge, and mobile ticketing particularly is a huge, it sits very comfortably almost with COVID-19, COVID-safe event
Yeah,
guidance.
I think look, there's always going to be good that comes out of anything that's very bad, and there are certainly going to be some good some good pieces of progress that have been accelerated because of what we're facing. I mean, as an event producer and promoter, it's always been a huge frustration, or sorry, in the last 10 years, it's been a huge frustration for me that we as an industry and as a collective of organizations could have been delivering a better service to our customer if everyone had agreed a protocol where electronic ticketing would be acceptable across the board, and that scanning and access control systems would take input and scanning from everybody that sold a ticket. Because of the politics of ticketing and the land grab of inventory, various companies have refused to do that. And we've, as a result, have perpetuated the necessity for a customer to have a piece of paper stuffed in an envelope and sent to their house. When the airline industry worked it out 10 years ago that you don't need a ticket. The good thing about COVID is, from a safety point of view now, everyone's going to be using an electronic ticket. And I think the pandemic will see the death of the paper ticket at last, and good riddance to it.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I mean, obviously, you know, you represent a very large number of outdoor events, and you've been involved in the Purple guidance, the COVID safe events guidance that you were involved in partnership with organisations, including the Association of Independent Festivals. Is there anything that among your members, is there any kind of technology that people are kind of crying out for, or and also, you know, on the subject of paper ticketing, I mean, I presume some of your events have the sort of older demographic who may not have smart technology. Is there a danger that they get excluded in this sort of move in the embracing of digital technology?
Well, there is that possibility. I agree with Stuart. I'm one of the good things from ticketing point of view that's going to come out of this pandemic is, with a bit of luck, that the demolition of bits of paper, they've become a bit of a nuisance. Getting my members to wind up to the 21st century and join in is quite a challenge. We've got 140 festivals in our membership, and mostly in the 3,000 to 10,000 capacity sort of bracket, one or two at the 15 and 20, but mostly in that sort of range. And technology is, they've been drag kicking and screaming in the direction of decent technology for many years. This will help, I think. I'm sorry to say that it's brought COVID has meant that it's going to help, but it's got to. We've got to cut out that whole business of bits of paper and people getting hold of other people's wrists and sticking on wristbands and all that kind of stuff in 2021 has got to be overcome. We've got to find different ways of doing it. One of the biggest problems we have at the moment is, no matter how much ticketing technology we put in place and how 21st century the whole thing is, without the guarantees that our festivals are going to go ahead, it's really hard to move forward. We're stuck in a kind of vicious circle of rapid testing. Will it work? Insurance, will the government help us? Customer confidence is just not there yet. We're constantly trying to build customer confidence and just let people know that we will get something on if we're allowed to and can do. But without the addition of insurance to cover such things as pandemics, we're a bit stuck. So what we're recommending to our members is plan for a normal festival, but in the background, plan for a COVID safe festival. Hence the guidance that's been published on the Purple Guide website. There's a lot of guidance there to help people understand how to run. Everybody has already commented that running economically viable festivals in a COVID safe way is just a very tricky business.
Absolutely, but we have seen, you know, in terms of customer confidence, we have seen a lot of ticket holders hold on to their tickets for, you know, postponed events, which seems to be encouraging, especially for sort of the bigger events. And Mo, you work with alongside or for events like Boomtown Fair, which is obviously very sizable, and Shambhala and things like that. So, Mo, the conversations that you're having with those sort of event managers, operators, I mean, what are you making changes? Are you having to adapt your systems to their demands in the face of COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where being a sort of a smaller technology-based company is really helping, because as these requirements are coming out, we are able to adapt our systems and adjust. And actually, that's brilliant, because everything, as Steve said, at the moment is very fluid. Purple Guide is fantastic, but it's updated regularly. And obviously you can at the moment, it feels like everybody needs a plan A, B, C, and D, really. And actually it's that ability to adapt and be flexible and develop software to take into account these new requirements that's going to be critical at the end of the day, because we have shows that are talking to the guys at Noisily. They're thinking about the option of doing rapid testing in cars. Now that works for them because they've got somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 cars turning up. We've looked at the flow rate profiles from previous years, and actually by asking customers to add a data field into their existing ticket that they've carried over that says what time they're planning to arrive, we can kind of mitigate all that. Now that works for them because they've got the space to do it. They might have to pass the cost on to customers for doing a test if even we get to a point where rapid testing on site does seem to be one of the solutions, which is still a very big question, obviously. But for other bigger shows, that simply just isn't possible. The sheer volume of traffic arriving and the flow profile of that arrival just means rapid testing on site is going to be hugely problematic. Then that pushes the problem back to, do we do testing at home? Now, if you do testing at home, how do you link your results through to your ticket? Now, effectively, again, that's another technology solution for you. So if you can do a test and get a code from the NHS Track and Trace app, that means you then have two requirements at the gate. You need a valid entry ticket that hasn't actually been used, and then you need to validate that by proving that you've had this test at home and within a certain time frame. And again, the technology will need to adjust and adapt, maybe via APIs or however it's done. But having a great technical team, very well versed in adapting to requirements of a range of different organisers of different shapes and sizes is absolutely crucial at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back on to the role that ticketing technology can potentially play in the whole sort of pre-event ticketing framework in a minute. But I just wanted to bring you in, Paul. Obviously, you provide a white label ticketing service for clients, including All White Cocoa and Dixie Fields Festivals. Have you worked with any COVID safe events, and has this whole situation, this crisis, kind of impacted your offering, your platforms?
Absolutely. I mean, we've adjusted the whole platform to actually cater and actually put in barriers and steps where people can run events. So we've had a few events that have been able to run. We've had mainly outdoor events where everyone's been tagged and people are being asked regarding track and trace. Data is being collected in advance. So we've been able to adjust the system to be taking all of this data prior to the booking. And then obviously when it's scanned in, we know who's scanned in, when they're scanned in, times and dates and everything else. They are being asked as well via the NHS to offer their data to the people. We've had other events running. We had an event running on Sunday where it's a much more low-key event where they were doing like a sit-down meal, very much data capture again, track and trace. So yeah, I mean, obviously the technology-wise, we've been increasing and developing constantly. A few of our events have grandstands, and when they were running, we had social distance grandstands where people could book online and collect all of their data. So you knew who was coming in, making sure that they were safe and giving all the relevant information. All these tickets were delivered via mobile as well with session time. So if they were to book, to say, I'm booking in for this period, that's the time that would be printed on their tickets. We've all bespoke messaging that says, what time they plan to come. Please stay in your car up to that point, and then obviously having late queues as well.
Okay, great. I mean, so in terms of staggered entry, that's obviously, you know, that's something you can enable, can you, via your systems? Is that sort of reasonably easy to do?
Absolutely, yeah. You can stagger it, the entry. So basically, they would come in, they would select what time they plan to arrive. That's all been have a count against each one as well. So you can set a limit every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes. At least then you can stagger the people turning up to the gate, try to remove any queuing. And it's
Yeah.
very, very easy to then remove as well. So if they are actually released, then obviously then you can release it.
Okay, and Stuart, I mean, in terms of the technology that you use at your events, I mean, obviously there is technology being used at the moment that enables, you know, organisers or ticket sort of service operators to kind of communicate with attendees on their devices. So in other words, they can be kind of guided to pick up and collect, you know, merch or food and beverage from a particular place, or they can be guided to a certain exit or entrance point, which makes a lot of sense if you're trying to manipulate the movement of crowds to prevent, you know, people building up around certain areas. I mean, is that technology that you use at your events?
Yeah, yeah, potentially yes in the future, but at the moment no. But just picking up on a couple of points that Paul and Mo have made. I mean, we've got an event that's running at the moment. It's not a festival; it's a Christmas light trail. And we've used timed entry. We're 420 people per 30 minutes. We're able to manage a socially distanced queue. There's a maximum queuing time of 15 minutes. And then when you get into the event, you're stewarded very carefully to maintain that social distancing. But it comes down to space, and you can have all the technology in the world in terms of driving people where you want them to be and what you want them to do at particular times. And I think that technology is there. But if you're trying to run, as Steve was saying earlier on, a 15,000 capacity festival, the fact is that if we're going to be working within the existing or anticipating what will be the framework of regulation for next summer, the biggest factor and the biggest hurdle to us is going to be not having enough space, not just physically not being able to keep people spread out. And I think next summer, you're not going to see the ability to stand 15, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people in front of a stage. So I think that's the biggest hurdle, I think, to next summer. And I'm sad to say that I think the reality is that you're going to see the front end of the summer potentially not be able to take place, and the back end of the summer hopefully survive.
Okay, Steve, I just wanted to bring you in the sense that, you know, there is a lot of technology out there and available, but clearly, you know, the outdoor events industry has suffered you know, it's been a hideous year, as we all know. So, you know, that's been a huge hit for everyone's income. Going forward to next year, you know, if we have a certain amount of months, the beginning of the summer, without any events, that's going to have a huge impact too. So surely there isn't going to be a huge amount of revenue among event operators to sort of push to invest in ticketing technology. I mean, how much of a challenge do you think that is going to be?
I think once we've got used to the idea that the early part of summer, I mean, the early festival season is already cancelled. We've just run out of time. So we're already looking at June events. If we get away with it and June events start to take place, they're almost certainly going to have to be COVID safe. I've no idea what the Evis family are planning on doing at this stage. But for the rest of us, as Stuart said, the amount of space you need for 5,000 people in front of a stage at one of the smaller events is 4 or 5 times more than you would normally need. And then you've got to depend entirely on people behaving themselves and actually doing what you want them to do. Right at the beginning of all this, there were some really interesting experiments way back in September. There was an event up in northeast Lancashire, which ran a 2,000 capacity outdoor concert, ran with 750 people. everything about it was COVID safe before we'd even written any COVID safe instructions. They knew what to do, they knew how to handle it. Festival organisers are resilient and can express themselves very well and work out how best to achieve things. But they all come up against the big stumbling block, that is capacity space in order to make it economically viable. You can't sell half your tickets to people and say, well, there's only going to be half the number of acts on stage because we can't get enough people in. You've got to completely reshape your festival and start looking at how you make a much smaller event work in your small space. And I will always add the caveat that if we don't have any insurance to cover us, then there's going to be a lot of hesitation.
Yeah, Chris, to put that into context, sorry to come back in again, to accommodate 5,000 people on a socially distanced basis in front of a stage, when the Unity Arena ran in Newcastle, they used a space that ordinarily would have contained 45,000 people. So that's the scale of the problem.
So absolutely, I mean, we need kind of, you know, the dream is, and what we want to see is safe but full capacity events. And, you know, obviously Mel and Ben sort of started the conversation, or was at least publicly, about, you know, testing being a means to that end. You know, back in the summer, I've sort of spoken to a few people, and there's been rumblings about pilot events taking place in January with pre-event testing. Has Stuart, have you been involved, or have you sort of been involved in conversations? Obviously, you know, you're talking to DCMS, you're involved in various organisations. Has there been much? Have you been involved in any conversations about those pilots, and in terms of the ticketing technology side? What
yeah, Greg Palmley, who's the acting CEO of Live, has absolutely been involved in those conversations, and we prior to tier 3 designations, there are certainly two sets of conversations that have been going on. One at an arena level, and there were two projects looked at for the end of January, and one at a small club level. We're waiting to hear on both as to whether they're going to be able to proceed in a tier 3 environment. And the worry is that the answer is going to be no, in which case they will then get delayed until probably March. So we won't then get the feedback on the science and the use of any sort of testing until then.
Okay. I mean, Paul, have you, in terms of your sort of technology, I mean, would it be a huge leap for you to be able to kind of incorporate the back end to sort of work alongside things like health passports? And obviously, you know, you've got the track and trace side there, you've got the contactless side there, but when it comes to kind of pre-event testing, was your technology able to sort of support that whole kind of the framework that would be needed to be implemented at pre-event?
Absolutely. I mean, that kind of check-in wouldn't be that difficult to put in place, but you would need a place to be able to API to get that information and get the responses. So as soon as there is a database out there that has the health passports in there that we can go and do a check against, then there's no reason why you couldn't do that fairly easily.
Chris, may I just step in there? Paul, are you suggesting a ticket agency can come up with a health passport?
No, I mean, if people have had testing and there was a virtual health passport where you got a code to say that you were safe to attend an event, it can be checked if there was a database that we could talk to.
Yeah, Mo, I was going to bring you in, as you know, in terms of what your view of that is, because it seems to me that, you know, you've got the customer information there, you've had the relationship up to that point, you could even use a ticketing technology to book the actual pre-event tests. So is that something that you're sort of looking at as well over there?
Yeah, I mean, I had a chat to Nick Morgan prior to this webinar, to get his feelings really on sort of where we're up to in terms of testing and integration with systems. And he also agrees that really it will be something to do with the code that you get. There's already this code that exists within the NHS Track and Trace app. that allows you to identify other people that you've been near or what have you. So as Paul said rightly, that as long as there is some kind of code that relates to a test that you've had, and obviously this is pre-show testing, there will be a way to API with that information and actually demonstrate that you're okay to come in. The problems that we face really, or events face, is it's still cost. It's who bears the cost of those tests, and it's timing as well, because you could argue that longer shows will have audiences who are more willing to pay for a more expensive test because they're on site for 3 days. But then the problem with instant testing on the way in is you're on site for 3 days. So if you're having your instant test on the way in, like the FA have trialled already, that's kind of okay, because if on the way in you're okay, by the end of the day when you go home, you're probably still okay. Whereas a 3 or 4 day show, that might be different. And then you're looking into some kind of retesting on site and the whole complications that arrive with that. One of the things we've worked with for a number of years now, and this is where we work with Glastonbury, is linked wristbands. So we'll scan a ticket and link you to your wristband with a QR code. So it's really low tech, but it's also very cost effective. And that could potentially be a way if we have to do retesting on site, because we can enable or disable those wristbands. It's low cost, it's low tech. Steve, you mentioned earlier about how on earth these cash-struck events are going to manage to pay for all this stuff. But ultimately, when you're employing technology that you've already been using for a number of years, ultimately your provider should be providing these services at no extra cost. I think the cost of a QR code on a wristband might be sort of 8 or 9 pence per wristband more. So it's not, that's what we're thinking about, is how can we make this work in a cost-effective way, and actually not reinventing the wheel, using tried and tested tech that we've employed in fields for many years. The last thing anyone needs now is some shiny new technology falling over. So yeah.
I just love Mo's forward-thinking, happy, smiling. It's all going to be all right. And I think for every obstacle that drops into place, she kind of comes up with a great answer. And it's fantastic. I think it's really good for the industry. It gives us all a bit of a lift of spirit, because everything else is pointing in the opposite direction.
Hopeful optimism and a small dose of and enough of a dose of realism, Steve, I hope.
Yeah, I think I would echo what Steve says. I think it's a very optimistic future, but I think unfortunately Steve and I have been part of the team talking to DCMS, and the fact is the wheels of government and civil service move at such a pedestrian pace that I think as an industry we should not be expecting to be relying upon any sort of world-beating track and trace system that our government is incapable of putting in place, and that any sort of test solution that we need is going to come from within our own ranks, I'm afraid to say.
Is there a lot of, I mean, obviously there's work behind the scenes happening, to try and make that happen, but are you encouraged that the work that is being done is sufficient, and that there's enough focus on it, there's enough sort of energy and an innovative people sort of making it a priority?
I think there's lots of talk going on, and I think there are lots of solutions that are potentially there now, but trying to get government and DCMS and Public Health England to focus and discuss those is proving extremely difficult, and the same reaction is being received by whether it be Melvin Benn, Harvey Goldsmith, Live, the trials that we've been looking to try and get in place, and to put it frankly, they're in the middle of fighting a pandemic and they're too busy. They're not forward looking at the moment. They're beating down the forest fire that's here right now. And I think we will get some dialogue. I think we will get some cooperation, but I do think it's going to be March before we start to see any significant dialogue and tests and trials taking place. But I do believe, though, that it will be a solution that will be created within the events industry and delivered by the events industry. It's not going to be something that we plug into any aspect of an NHS or government scheme. So.
Okay, thank you. Paul, when you're looking ahead, which everyone has to at the moment, and it's very difficult to forecast what that ahead is going to look like, is guidelines are changing all the time, the environment's changing all the time, and arguably not getting a great deal better. But it's very difficult to sort of work in that kind of environment or plan in that kind of environment. But in your view, are you sort of work in terms of, we get to a certain point in the summer where events can take place, or where there is a sort of health passport? Do you expect that to be on the back of a kind of vaccine situation, or do you think ticket or pre-event testing would be the way the industry is likely to go?
It's a very, very difficult question to answer. You could look at it in both directions. I think pre-testing is always very positive, and obviously making sure you have the data and all of that before they actually attend would be very, very good. I think it will be very difficult to implement and get everyone to have that done, but it is feasible and there is possibilities around it. Obviously, testing people as they arrive, again, is a great scenario to be in, but the logistics around it is very, very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, we sort of started talking right at the very outset. Stuart was saying, digital ticketing is obviously, we're way behind, the airline industry and everything else. I just wanted, there's been sort of various tests with sort of RFIDs being used by various events. There's sort of lots of different technologies out there. But are we getting to a point where all of these things are kind of starting to come together to be knitted into a product that's going to make a great deal of sense for almost every operator? I mean, that different ticketing services will be offering different versions of it, but essentially they'll be fully encompassed sort of digital offerings that will kind of, involve cashless, involve contactless entry, that will involve, AI supported kind of communication guidance for attendees pre and post during events. I mean, Mo, I guess I'll put this to you, but I mean, how close are we, or do you see that as the future we're moving towards now? Maybe COVID has accelerated it a little bit, that we'll have these fully encompassed kind of 360 digital offerings that will basically be what the fan experiences when they buy a ticket. They'll have that whole.
I love the fact that you've directed that question at me, because we don't really do RFID.
Right.
We made a decision about 3 years ago that there are so many companies out there doing a great job with RFID, and we do a lot of other tech, that it's not something that we're going to push. Now, a lot of the festivals we work with are independent boutique festivals, and so we sat down and we asked ourselves, what do our clients actually want? Now, for us, the experience of the festival, of going into a field for 3 days, of losing yourself, that's paramount to us and to most of our clients, actually. And by coming up with this linked wristband by the QR code, you get the advantage of potentially being able to track people, being able to do capacity management, being able to redeem things from your wristband. So crew who are using this system can redeem their meals in the staff canteen, for example, by just zapping their QR code. The one bit it doesn't do is cash, because we would never put cash on a QR code. It's just not secure enough. But effectively, shows like Shambhala that we work with, fiercely independent, all about community. They've developed the BOMA app, which is an app designed not to collect data, to provide that amazing experience on site, to deliver information into the hands of their audience, but without tracking them, without gathering data at every moment, just for the sheer hell of gathering more data, So we very much come from this angle of, let's try and solve all the problems that the cashless solution and RFID solution would do, but using much older school tech, more robust, more resilient, a lot cheaper. We keep coming back to this cost element, and so that's what we've been doing. Now, I know for some shows it makes commercial sense to go down the RFID route. There is talk of uplift in sales if your wristband is linked to your bank account. But I think in the environment in which we work, people are happy to use a contactless payment card at the bar. It works really well at the shows that we're at, and we've solved the other problems about welfare tracking and being able to do other things from your wristband without having to go all the way down the RFID route.
Okay, Stuart, I mean, what's your experience of that? Are you sort of feeling that are you seeing that you're able to move towards an environment where you could have literally an all-encompassing kind of digital platform that might include something like RFID?
Potentially. I mean, a Belladrum, I mean, we've gone the route that Mo is sort of advocating, which is that, well, we would have done this year if we'd run. So Belladrum is obviously a 12, 15-year-old festival, and it's this year was our year of getting rid of paper and getting rid of our bar token system. And we trialed partially last year contactless, and the customer took to it very, very well, as we all do in the high street now. And so I think from a Belladrum point of view, and the scale that we operate at Belladrum, I see that I don't see an RFID solution as being required. Yes, I'd love that data, but do I want to have the customer feel as though I'm watching them all the time? No, I don't. So I think we can get an electronic entry system that works very well. We can provide now ease of sale using contactless, and for us at Belladrum, that's sufficient. We're not worried about money being retained in bank accounts and uplifts and whatever. We'll just provide as good a service as we can and maximize spend in that way, rather than it being data driven. But with regards to a wider system though, I mean, I think if a system is developed, I think the key to any system now is that it has to have accessibility from every point of sale, and whether it be a plug-in or an adapter of some sort. It's probably more for touring than it is for festivals, because festivals tend to sell through one location, the website or the community that is the festival, so you can actually drive those sales using a uniform system. But when it comes to touring, many promoters such as ourselves use the system or use a broad distribution system, and we want as many ticket agents to sell as possible and make it as easier for the customer to find that ticket, and for our event to benefit from the marketing input from all of those sales outlets. So I think if there is a system to be developed, for me, it comes back to, as we said, providing the customer with the best service possible. And that has to be a system that would allow anyone to sell a ticket and the customer still to get all the technological benefits that system can provide.
Okay, thank you very much, Stuart. I mean, we're sort of moving towards the point now, really, that I need to bring in the audience. So I've got a couple of questions here. From Thea Roberts: is there a way to add testing codes into management systems such as Entry and cross-check with tickets? So I'll put that to you, Paul.
I mean, yes, and anything can be linked into a ticket. It's just having that background and having that knowledge beforehand. And computers are very simple things. Anything can be developed, anything can be imported. It's how you use it, how you display it, and what happens after it. You know, if it's a clear part, you know, if it's a test result and it's clear, you know, then obviously then a ticket can be released at that point, and then it's holding tickets. But technology-wise, there's nothing stopping that.
No, okay. There's another question here actually, is about, you know, contactless payments on greenfield sites, and obviously, you know, network challenges that you have. You know, this I guess is, you know, it's a contactless, it's a cashless payment sort of question, and I'm not sure quite how involved you are in that. But I mean, you know, well, I guess so. Is that something that, as a company, you're involved in, cashless payments, and what sort of challenges are there when it comes to greenfield sites?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've got our own Wi-Fi segment of the company. We provide Wi-Fi to lots of festivals out there, and cashless bars, and actually having a really good, sturdy internet connection is incredibly important for all festivals. You know, they only need to be down for 5 minutes to find out that lost a hell of a lot of money. You know, so we definitely go down that route, and being a single company, obviously we have the infrastructure that's in place that helps the front of house, helps the scanning, but then we can then broaden that into the bars and everywhere else. So yes.
Okay, good stuff. All right, well, we're pretty much running out of time. I mean, if it's not too much of a sort of general question, I just wanted to ask you all really, you know, what, and just trying to end this on a positive note really, starting with you, Steve. I mean, the industry has come together in a way that it previously was almost unimaginable, really. You know, we've got competitors, whether it's ticketing companies or promoters or associations, everybody kind of coming together in a way to try and sort of fight from the same corner. Whether it's ticketing technology or you know, like, let's try and keep it towards ticketing technology. But what's heartening things have you seen as we end this year and we move into the unknown next year? What kind of heartening things, what gives you hope really moving into next year that you've seen of late, created by the events industry?
What gives me a heart for the 2021 season is listening to Mo Jones telling us that it's all going to be great. But link that to something Stuart said earlier. That here we have amongst probably up to 1,000 music festivals in the UK, an enormous amount of talent and experience in organising, running events, dealing with crisis, handling risk assessment. We have got a massive amount of talent. And even from just today's webinar, on January 5th, the DCMS Select Committee are meeting. And the question is, what is the future of music festivals? They'll meet again in February. And if we as an industry were able to cut the investigation short by going to them with a solution that we have created because we know how to, then we've got a great deal more chance of getting government to understand who we are and what we're doing. Because at the moment, they're too busy handling Christmas, then they're fiddling around with Brexit, then it's Easter, and then it's too late. We need to hit them very hard in early January and say, we as an industry know what we're doing, leave us to it, we'll get on with it.
Okay, Paul, same question to you really. What has kind of impressed you about the efforts of the events industry this year, or gives you hope moving into next year?
Absolutely. I mean, the events industry itself has done amazing work, just driving forward, keeping alive, keeping going. You know, people holding on to their tickets, pushing them through to next year. People that have developed all of this information, all of these systems that have been developed, and people are putting in all of these schedules and timelines and management of everyone. And they're all pushing forward, and everyone's been doing it this year to try and get an event running this year. And some have been very successful. And, you know, I think there's no reason why they won't continue to do that right the way through till next year. And fingers crossed, we can get as much live as possible.
Okay, good stuff. Mo, then, same question to you, please.
Okay, so 2 points, I think. First is collaboration that Steve mentioned. It's been absolutely brilliant, having a great big pool of events. We've all our account managers have been doing a fantastic job touching base with everyone, finding out what their plans are, checking they're okay, and then passing that information from one to another. So our new website is COVID Secure Festivals, and we are welcoming blog content from anyone involved in the events industry from whatever angle. And we're just going to, obviously Purple Guide is doing a fantastic job with the actual guidelines and the very stringent and detailed mechanisms. But on COVID Secure Festivals, you can just read about all the bits and pieces that are going on, some case studies, some examples of what people are up to. So memberships of AFO and AIF, things like that, have been absolutely critical this year, and I think that will continue. And then the other point, which is going to completely escape me right now. Oh yeah, the instalment plans. It's a small point. We haven't talked about it today. Customer confidence is something we talked about earlier. It's hard to persuade people to part with a load of cash for a festival ticket now, and it's going to be similarly hard in January and February, I'm sure. So one of the small, and again, it's not a new thing, we've been doing it for years, but if you can get your customers to buy an instalment plan ticket in January or February for a tenner, you can actually pay the VAT on your entire ticket value. So if you've got a £150 ticket, you can claim that 5% VAT rate, which we've got at the moment. So one, you can take advantage of that, which the government, a small thing that the government have done to help event organisers. And two, it is a way to say to your audience that we really need you to demonstrate that you're going to support us in 2021 if we can run safely. Could you just part with a tenner or 20 quid now just to put your, you know, just to demonstrate that you're going to come to our event? So I think that instalment payments and encouraging confidence, maybe offering Booking Protect, so they know if they can't come because they've got COVID or a family member is self-isolating, that's a really good way of instilling confidence. And then thirdly, obviously buying a ticket from someone reputable who's, if the event can't happen, going to give you your money back. So just to get that, just to start to instill that confidence early in the year, I think that's going to be key for us.
Great stuff. Okay, Stuart. So same question to you, really. Is there anything that's giving you hope? And if it's connected to ticketing, all the better.
Yeah, lots, and I think Mo made some really good points there. And one of the things that we are pushing government on is the extension of the VAT relief, and that will certainly be ramped up in the new year when we believe that we have the ability to get them to focus more. And we're asking for that 5% VAT relief to be extended by to a period of 3 years. Because that's how long it's going to take us to recover from this. As we said before, I think the technology sharing and providing customer service better. And then to just pick up a question that's just been popped in, I think one of the other really good things about COVID is that hopefully it will see the collapse and disappearance of the secondary market once and for all. And it's amazingly brilliant news how wonderfully organizations like Viagogo are struggling. I find that very, very heartening.
Absolutely. Good riddance to them. So yeah, well, thank you very much, Stuart. Thank you, Mo. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Paul. It's been a really interesting and informative session. I really appreciate your involvement, and thank you very much to our sponsors, Redbox. That's it from us for this webinar. We'll see you again soon. Thanks very much, everyone.